Ragnar sits at the table and writes, but in his head the question does not cease. Why in a world of swords and magic? He is forced to deal with such an inefficient thing as paperwork and understands even here he cannot escape it. He is Ragnar Brave, a border nobleman. In the estate most people have already died in battle, but suddenly he calls Sebas. He notices that the time is just right and asks for help, but the butler Sebas categorically refuses, coldly noting that even for the lord this remains the responsibility of the new ruler. This land is a frontier, a territory of the brave. It is full of monsters and clashes with neighboring states happen often here. Life here is harsh, so other nobles call it a land to be abandoned. Sebas remarked with a slight smile, "It is strange that anyone in this family even knows how to work with papers." Ragnar's father and his older brothers were warriors. Though Ragnar, the third son, grew up and was raised to be able to kill monsters and enemy soldiers. But a month ago everything turned upside down. His entire family died in the war. Only he survived, and so he was forced to inherit this border territory. Ragnar angrily threw the documents aside. If it goes on like this, it would be better for him to dive into the dungeons. He is only the third son and dreamed of living freely, like an adventurer. But Sebas immediately decisively rejects this idea. It is not an option, and he reminds Ragnar that he still has one duty to fulfill. The brave land abounds with natural treasures and monster materials. Hundreds of adventurers flock here, so shops and craftsmen trading these wonders prosper. And every time they start to develop the mountain ridges, monsters launch an attack. As soon as they try to lay out fields, enemy states burn them down and the land cannot feed itself. Everything depends only on the support of other noble families, so Ragnar, as the heir, must study at the academy of the royal capital. There he will have to earn the favor of other nobles and ask for their support. Ragnar doubts will he really be able to do this. He thinks if his family has spent their whole life in combat training, can't he just refuse to enroll? But Sebas immediately cuts this off. But Ragnar asks what this time. Sebas confesses there is something very important he needs to talk about. It directly concerns the young master Ragnar. Sebas reports that a proposal of hand and heart has arrived. This caught Ragnar by surprise. He felt it was all too sudden, but Sebas explained that for the lord this is usual. Ragnar looks at him and recalls that his brothers also had fiancées, but Sebas admits that they hated this land and never settled here. In fact, they didn't even come to the funeral. When he told them about it, they seemed relieved. Ragnar continues writing and hesitates whether to put an end to it when suddenly his pen breaks. Sebas instantly calls this unacceptable and points out that Ragnar is already thinking of giving up. Ragnar seriously asks if Sebas really understands this and explains. Soon he will live in a dormitory near the royal capital. During long breaks he will return to manage the territory, meaning he will be incredibly busy. He asks Sebas to refuse the offer on his behalf and extends the broken pen, but Sebas refuses. He explains that this time the offer comes from the ducal family Oldwood, the very one that supplies their lands with weapons and food. Ragnar is clearly surprised. He immediately inquired about their title and Sebas clarified they are counts, so marriage is quite possible. Ragnar freezes for a moment. This name seems to awaken something ancient in him, and suddenly realization surfaces. He begins to remember. Long ago, after an orc hit him, fragments of his past life began to return to him. Suddenly it dawns on him he was reincarnated into this world. However, he still cannot recall the name of that game. In his previous life, he lived in a country called Japan and sincerely loved its culture. The game he once played became the world he now lives in. This is the world of an autumn game. The protagonist is a commoner who enters an academy full of aristocrats, gradually builds relationships with potential lovers, and all this follows a familiar pattern. But as the plot develops, battles become more frequent. In the end, even the royal capital turns into a battlefield, and it is then that he suddenly remembers something else. This game was terrible while I was playing it. When he played, he often felt irritation. The same one always interfered. The daughter of the Oldwood family, the villainous Alicia. She was raised to become a queen. She is the prince's fiancée with flawless appearance and incredible talent. But her character is the worst. She is extremely elitist. Every day she appears with her retinue and relentlessly annoys the protagonist. Meanwhile, the hero grows closer to the prince, and this only fuels jealous actions. Eventually, everything ends with a duel for the prince. But everything was decided immediately. Alicia suffered a crushing defeat, and her engagement to the prince was immediately broken. Ragnar is not sure if he remembers it correctly, but after those events, Alicia took responsibility and was sent to marry a border nobleman. Then he realized that border noble family is his own house. Ragnar lies on the bed and thinks, He believes it couldn't be worse. If he has to live with that noblewoman, it will be unbearable. He imagines a life where he is humiliated with words every day. From now on, he will also have to attend the academy with her, and for him this is pure despair. But suddenly Sebas knocks on the door and says that the lady will arrive soon. Putting on his coat, Ragnar wonders why she, who was raised only for the heir to the throne, ended up in such a place. He thinks it is just a way to get rid of trouble and make an example out of her. Sebas reminds him, many die on the territory of the brave. After the war, those who survived worked tirelessly just to survive and support the courageous family. Sebas tells him that he must do his part as well. Ragnar agrees. Outside the house, Ragnar and Sebas wait as the carriage approaches. Ragnar's face is tense, and Sebas stands nearby completely calm. Alicia steps out of the carriage, helped by the butler. He looks at Ragnar. A mark is noticeable on her face. Ragnar freezes in surprise, but Sebas quickly nudges him and politely introduces him to the lady. Alicia notices that Ragnar reacts the same way as everyone else when he sees her face. Ragnar immediately asks what happened to her, but Alicia remains silent. And then Ragnar gently tells her that if she doesn't want to talk about it, that's perfectly normal. He explains, in the land of the brave, such things are common. Alicia's eyes widen when she asks what he means. Ragnar explains that soldiers and adventurers are often covered in scars. He suggests that her burn was from a duel. It's a big scar. Her once beautiful face is now distorted. To him, it looks like the face of a person living in shame, and anyone who sees it for the first time will probably recoil. Alicia sinks into deep thought. Meanwhile, her valet calls her and says she is leaving. Ragnar is surprised. The Duke's daughter appears without a maid or escort. As soon as the carriage left, Ragnar silently looked at Alicia. The carriage was tiny. She had only one suitcase. No one was left nearby, and that was enough to understand her situation. Alicia stands as if she has given up everything. Her figure resembles a prisoner of war from an enemy country. Sebas beckoned Alicia with a gesture and led her forward. Ragnar looks and realizes this is not what he expected. He was sure she would behave arrogantly and cause trouble. Inside, Ragnar suggests escorting her to the room. But when he looked at her more closely, he asks her to wait. He reaches out to her shoulder and grabs something in his palm. Alicia does not notice this. She assumes there is dust on her, apologizes, and explains that she is wearing old clothes. Ragnar quietly laughed and waved it off. It's a trifle, there is much more dust here, so she shouldn't worry. Alicia simply accepts this and continues walking, but then Ragnar looks at what he caught. It is a demonic insect, a creature born from resentment and turning into a curse. If someone is possessed by them, they will never see a normal life. To his surprise, almost 100 of them cling to Alicia. This number clearly shows how much hostility is pouring onto her. Ragnar feels that she is deeply hated. An ordinary person under such a burden would have long gone insane, but Alicia walks calmly, not a hint of illness. Ragnar freezes and begins to reconsider everything again. She grew up as a princess and was meant to become a queen. Those who are raised that way are not supposed to act without thinking, and he wonders, would a noble daughter really dare to make a scene and challenge a commoner to a duel? This is the world of autumn games where a drama always needs an antagonist, so even Alicia's nature could have been twisted. The world is designed for convenience. Ragnar has this clear picture in his head, and they both struggle. Fate drags them along. When her fate is tied to this world, he remembers what will happen next. Even after the engagement is broken, Alicia does not let go of hatred. She makes a pact with a demon and turns into a monster. She is eventually overcome, but her revenge devours the land of the brave, and in every route this land is consumed by war and disappears. Ragnar suddenly realized he was never part of the original story, and that means Alicia will sooner or later come for him, and that is a serious problem. He begins to rack his brain about what to do. Both are victims of fate. If this continues, his territory will fall, but he restrains himself. No matter how much he fights, everything leads to destruction. He scratches the back of his head and decides. If that is so, he will help Alicia change clothes and help her get up again. What do you think? Wouldn't it be better if she looked at life a little more brightly, even if something goes wrong later? He will handle it when the time comes. And then in his thoughts, he crushes another demonic beetle underfoot. He decides to resist this world. Alicia looks at him and doubts his actions. But Ragnar just smiles and waves his hand, pulling it out, and in his thoughts he is already set to do everything he can. Meanwhile, Alicia silently watches him. She realizes that no one has given her such an easy, carefree smile for a long time. No one even notices how something begins to sprout in the heart of the evil lady. 5 days have passed since Alicia came to the brave family. But everything goes not as Ragna expected. She does not explode or offend anyone, she just eats the food brought to her and, besides that, remains locked in her room. Meanwhile, Ragnar is engaged in something completely different. He spends his time exterminating demonic insects. This is constant and annoying. These creatures can be thrown into the air by magic from a distant source. But just then Sibas enters and notices that Ragnas is clearly struggling. Ragnas, noticeably irritated, asks if Sibas sees them too and asks him to help, pointing to a swarm of insects around. Ragna mutters curses under her breath and thinks to track down the source and eliminate it on the spot, but Sibas instantly stops him, warning that such fuss could dissolve the house. But most importantly, the real problem lies elsewhere. Alicia's heart draws demonic insects to her. Ragnar rejects this idea. This brave family only knows how to fight. He doesn't even understand what is expected of him at all. Alicia is the first girl his age he has ever talked to. He doesn't even understand what normal youth is. Sibas reassures him everything will be fine. The next morning everything changes. Someone knocks on Alicia's door. Mrs. Ragnar greeted her and said that breakfast is ready. He got the idea of tea parties at the academy, so he decided to try eating toaster. Maybe it would bring them closer. He keeps knocking, insisting that everyone enjoy breakfast. He calls her, wake up and join them. But suddenly the door burst open. Alicia, already awake, stood in the doorway showing that they were about to break, and Ragnar simply smiled with relief because he was afraid she might do something radical. Later they sit together. Alicia sharply asks what would happen if the door really broke, but Ragnar just waved it off. Repairs are an everyday matter for him. This stunned Alicia. She doesn't understand why a nobleman would bother with repairs, but he changes the subject again and tells her to first enjoy breakfast and coffee. Alicia looks at the cup, raises it to her lips, and takes a sip. But suddenly she croaked and whispered that it was too bitter. Ragnar, surprised, raised his eyes and asked what was wrong. Alicia apologizes and admits that she is drinking coffee for the first time. At home, she always drank tea. Ragnar suddenly realizes, in these parts coffee is too expensive to prepare properly. He apologizes, says he cannot offer anything better, but Alicia smiles and reassures him, it's okay, don't worry. Ragnar instantly adds sugar to the cup to improve the taste. Alicia looks closely, senses the sweetness of the aroma, and decides that it can be drunk just like that. Ragnar warns her, be careful if you drink this before sleep, it will be hard to fall asleep. They silently continue eating, and suddenly a quiet tension settles in the air. Alicia looks at his plate and asks what he is eating. Ragnar simply replies, monster meat, and explains that the boys of the Bray family are fed it from childhood. Alicia, eyes full of wonder, asks if it is poisonous. Ragnar says if you start from childhood you get used to it. The taste is far from ideal, but during the war it becomes an indispensable source of food. Alicia does not take her eyes off him, but suddenly asks why he is leaving. He does everything himself, even if it requires extraordinary effort. Ragnar answers without hesitation, there are not enough hands, so when necessary even servants take up arms, but recently most of them died in battle. Alicia noticeably flinched from this. Ragnar continues, in a brave family a defeat that does not take life is not considered a true loss. For them the most precious thing is to survive, endure, and rise again. Then he stands up and gently extends his hand, barely touching the alluring hair. He tells her that she is truly incredible. Here scars are not ashamed of, in fact, they are worn with pride. Ragnar lifts the hair, reveals the scars, and explains that he himself bears his own. But suddenly he realizes how close he has gotten. It's a habit from checking wounded soldiers. He slightly pulls back, smiles, and tells her he came to invite her for a walk. He explains that although the territory is in disorder, its nature is still rich and beautiful. Then he asks if she would like to walk with him. Here human conflicts seem petty. On this land they become unimportant. Alicia holds her gaze on him for a moment. She agrees and asks him to show her the territory. Ragnar smiles and accepts without hesitation. The sun rose high above them, the mountains stretch along the horizon, and dense trees fill the entire landscape. Alicia admits that she agreed to come, but no one said they would go so deep into the mountains. This is the Udina mountain ridge, a huge massif near the territory of the brave. It hides rare plants and minerals not found in the royal capital. Alicia suddenly realized she was expecting something completely different, perhaps shops or city goods. Ragnar quietly laughed and explained that there was nothing like that here. She should have noticed it on the way. This is not a tourist town, it is a harsh settlement. Only adventurers who hunt monsters come here. He adds that the only real entertainment is gambling, and even recalled a story. Once someone bet that his father would die in battle, and apparently someone made a good profit from it. But suddenly anxiety appeared on Alicia's face. Ragnar immediately noticed this and apologized, saying it was inappropriate to speak like that to a lady. Alicia easily tells him that everything is fine if this is the custom here. She accepts it. Ragnar looks at her reaction and understands. Just like with coffee, she is learning to accept this world as it is. Even in a completely unfamiliar place, Alicia persistently tries to adapt, and Ragnar notices this and suggests they rest a little. Stopping by the river, Alicia kneels down and scoops water with her palms. But as soon as she tried, a noticeable surprise appeared on her face. The taste is pure and refreshing. The Udina mountain ridge, towering high above the world where evaporation is barely noticeable, preserves crystal-clear natural water. Ragnar quietly watches her, realizing that she will never find such clarity in the royal capital, but then he calls her. He says that although this land is harsh and hard to accept, once you understand it, living here becomes easier. Alicia listens and agrees. Ragnar continues, enemies and allies live on the same land. They must never be underestimated. They must be deeply understood, and only then can one prepare to survive. This is the teaching of the brave family. He suddenly remembered that he had heard something similar in another world. In this land, people make decisions themselves, relying on their own understanding and fight for their choice. Alicia thoughtfully says that she has seen the expressions of people here. They are nothing like the rumors she once heard. At the same time, she notices another thing. People of the brave land rarely smile. Their lives are shaped by difficult choices. But then Ragnar tells her that laughing is perfectly normal after all. This is a place where people stake their lives and deaths for entertainment. He drives away the gloomy mood and tells her not to stop. The destination is already near. Ragnar jumps onto a stone ahead and looks back at her. He extends his hand to help her up, asks her not to laugh at him, but then smiles and says, "Then laugh." Alicia takes his hand and with a slight smile says that he is a strange person. Later they reach the mountain summit. Alicia froze at the view. From here, the whole town spread out below them. This place leaves her in awe. Ragnar tells her that this is his favorite place. Although it looks ordinary, it is very important to him. He starts preparing food, glances at her, and says that after such a long walk she is probably terribly hungry. A light snack should be enough. But suddenly Alicia calls out to him and, addressing him as Lord Ragnar, asks for permission to ask him something. Ragnar tells her that formal addresses are not necessary, but adds that for him everything is fine anyway. Alicia admits that she is not used to them either and asks him not to speak so formally. Ragnar quietly laughed. Alicia waved it off, saying it was just a trifle. Ragnar agrees, but she suddenly calls him by his name. She speaks only after she has thought everything over, even after endless worries, and when she has accepted the outcome, regret sometimes returns and she asks what he would do in such a situation. Alicia looks straight at him. Ragnar freezes, remembers something, but answers cautiously maybe time will solve everything, or maybe it is just a convenient excuse. He says that by choosing one path, you always lose another. What is lost cannot be returned. Alicia presses on, but what if nothing is left? She explains that she has lived her whole life for one goal. If she loses it, and then nothing remains. Like a duchess, she believes she is already dead. That is why she came to this abandoned land. But she immediately apologizes for speaking at the wrong time. Ragnar looks at her intently. He notices the swarm again. Demonic bugs multiply. There are more and more of them. In his head, he asks himself if it is really impossible to cut off these feelings. But suddenly he remembers Sebas's words, clumsy but honest. If he remains like that, it will be enough. Ragnar clenches his fist and calls her out loud. He told Alicia that from now on he will protect her. Alicia was caught off guard. She is clearly confused. But Ragnar does not back down. Even if Duchess Alicia is no longer there, she is now Alicia from a brave family, and as long as that is true, he will protect her at any cost. Alicia laughs quietly and says that it is unusual for him to say such things. Ragnar laughs too, and he admits that he actually practiced this phrase in advance and even imagined that moment. To him, it sounds absurd. Who even practices something like that? In the end, everything seems pointless, but Alicia looks. She looks at him and says she doesn't mind. Everything is so simple and clear. Ragnar meets her gaze and Alicia admits that maybe she thought too much. But suddenly she raises an important point. If he returns with her to the academy, he will face hostility and malice, and still she asks if he will protect her. Ragnar smiles without hesitation and says he is used to such matters, so she can rely on him. Alicia responded with a smile. Suddenly Ragnar looks back and loudly calls, "Onyx, did you see that?" Alicia is puzzled, but suddenly a colossal presence looms. It turns out to be a huge dragon responding. The oath was witnessed, and Alicia's eyes widen in shock. Ragnar indifferently introduces the black dragon, calls him Onyx, and says he is his friend, but suddenly Alicia falls to the ground. Ragnar is stunned. He only wanted someone to witness the oath, but instead she lies unconscious. He calls her. Meanwhile, the dragon comments on her unconsciousness, calling it a weakness. And so their first outing ended chaotically and unexpectedly, a beginning filled with trials that ended in a sudden collapse. Next day at the estate, Alicia immediately. Someone questions Ragnar about what happened yesterday. Ragnar calmly explains that he thought making an oath before the dragon would be romantic. Alicia asks again what kind of dragon it was exactly. Ragnar asks again, does she mean Onyx? They say that Onyx is a dragon living deep in the mountain range, but Ragnar is actually glad. Thanks to the dragon's blessing, the bug demons surrounding Alicia disappeared, and she stands completely confused, asking why Ragnar is so calm in the middle of all this. Then suddenly Ragnar remembered what Sibes told him earlier that day. Long ago he challenged Onyx to a one-on-one fight. The battle ended in a draw, and because of that the dragon acknowledged him, although Ragnar himself says he almost died during that clash. However, everything was settled. They finally managed to come to an agreement. Alicia quietly noted that she probably looked ridiculous panicking in such a place, and suddenly one of the maids calmed her down. She says that everyone reacted the same way when they first came here. Another servant adds that over time nothing here surprises anymore. Meanwhile, Alicia notices that everyone is buried in papers. She reaches out her hand to Ragnar and asks him to give it to her, and Ragnar is puzzled. Even with knowledge of the modern world, the workload is overwhelming and will take him a very long time to finish everything. But he tells her that if it is not too much trouble, he would be grateful for help. Alicia immediately calls Sibes and asks to see the previous documents. Sibes agrees without hesitation. And Alicia takes the papers, and her attention instantly sharpens like a blade. She notices strange money movements from one of the shops. Then she starts sorting through the documents one by one again, helping to bring order. Finally, Alicia says that most of this should now be settled. Sibes openly praises her skills. No wonder she was once called a talented woman. Ragnar quietly observes and suddenly realizes, compared to noble education in this world, modern education is clearly poorer in basic knowledge. Looking at Alicia, another thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Without those devilish bugs clinging to her, she could smile like an ordinary girl. Later, Alicia watches as everyone on the estate gets to work. The maid wipes the windows, and another worker tends the garden. Suddenly, Alicia announces that she herself is going to help clean the mansion. Everyone freezes in shock. The maid immediately objects, insisting that they cannot allow her to work so much. Alicia firmly insists on her point. Now she is merely a servant of the Brave family, and there are still so many things ahead that she has never experienced. She wants to discover them herself. Servants and workers call out to Alicia, wait, but she does not back down and stubbornly insists that she wants to help. From afar, Sibes and Ragnar watch the scene unfold. Ragnar quietly says she is truly a good person, and Sibes agrees, adding to the young lord that they too must strive. But then Sibes says he is already mentally ready, admits that he deliberately left part of the work to Ragnar. Ragnar can only look at him with distrust, again realizing how calculating Sibes can be, and suddenly notices something strange in the documents. Prices in one of the weapon stores are too high. Timing is perfect. The shop opened exactly on the day Alicia arrived, and it seems to be run by people from the royal capital. Their trading style immediately catches the eye. They present their goods as rare treasures found only in the capital and behave with pride as if they were nobility. But in the lands of the brave, weapons are expendable items, tools of survival, not luxury objects. Such business should not bring great profit. Ragnar instantly understands the plan. These people are not here on business. They are watching Alicia, and Sibes asks what he intends to do. Ragnar answers simply, he will uproot the problem. Night falls over the territory. Ragnar stands outside and gazes at the nearby houses and shops. But then he remembers Sibes had earlier warned him to be careful. Allegedly, there is a very skilled person at the post. Ragnar asks where this information came from. Sibes says that some traveler nearby reported it. The traveler got angry because of the shop's arrogant attitude and, unable to bear it, tried to steal something valuable from them, And then the man lost his right hand before he even managed to understand what happened. He did not see the movement of the sword at all. Against the backdrop of the harsh adventures of this land, his hand was cut off without even drawing a knife. There is no doubt about this. This is the work of a mage. This world is filled with magical essence, and those who can freely control it are called sorcerers. During the war, enemy mages always caused the greatest harm. Ragnar narrowed his eyes and realized the truth. These people really intend to erase Alicia. She is their target. With this realization, Ragnar decides to go inside. Ragnar kicks the door, it bursts open. Inside, a group of men instantly turned to him and demanded to know who he was. But one of them immediately recognized him as Ragnar the Brave and loudly asked why he had come here. Ragnar threw the question back at them. He says that they were the ones who acted first. It seems they were sneaking around and spying on the territory, but Ragnar gives them a chance, if they honestly explain why he promises not to punish too harshly. The men exchanged glances and burst out laughing, but immediately drew their swords and pointed them at him. Ragnar calmly glanced at them and said that standing with weapons before the Lord, their intentions were already obvious. One of the men says he doesn't remember ever raising a hand against anyone, but the bald one decides he should speak as long as they are not caught with weapons, and as long as Ragnar stays silent here, there will be no problems. The men instantly rushed at him, laughing and mocking. He came alone and for them was just a naive third son. Then Ragnar struck first, and from his blow one man instantly fell. Another was kicked so hard that he crashed into the wall with a thud. As Ragnar looks at them intently, suddenly a figure in a hood begins to applaud. The man praises him, emphasizing that Ragnar is only 15 years old. Such a combination of youth and such strength is truly impressive. Ragnar instantly realized this person is a mage, but the mage calmly asks him a question. He asks how Lady Alicia is doing. Ragnar asks what exactly he means, but the mage just laughed. He calls Alicia a so-called wunderkind, a genius who should already have submitted to his gift, and imagines her completely consumed by demonic bucks. Instantly, Ragnar disappears from sight and in a moment appears right in front of the wizard and plunges a blade into his chest. Ragnar tells him that day after day he sent swarms of demonic beetles against Alicia, but then decides to teach him instead. Now everyone in the estate loves Alicia. She handles the work excellently and finally lives freely, smiling. The mage's expression twists. Suddenly he summons a giant praying mantis and the creature lunges straight at Ragnar. The wizard cannot accept this. Alicia smiles freely. Alicia lives peacefully, and he refuses to believe it. Every day he poured his feelings into her through demonic beetles, a curse meant to make her feel resentment towards everyone around, a constant curse. The wizard declared he would go check it himself, but before he could even move, Ragnar struck him with a devastating blow, tossing both the man and his mantis into the air. But the sorcerer quickly casts a spell at Ragnar again, and to his horror, it does not work. He cannot understand this. No matter what he tries, he cannot even cut off Ragnar's hand, and Ragnar calmly tells him the truth: everything you do is in vain. But Ragnar is not finished yet. First, he says the blow is for the traveler who lost his hand. He swung his sword and with one strike cut down the summoned monster, then said the next is for all those pests the mage constantly sent against Alicia. Ragnar sharply steps on the man's foot and demands an answer. If he reveals who is behind this, Ragnar promises to spare his life. But the magician gets confused and reveals the truth himself, the Duke's family. Ragnar instantly understands this and even thanks the man for the confirmation. Then Ragnar raises his sword once more. This strike is for Alicia's suffering. The blade falls down. The wizard now lies helplessly on the floor, muttering curses at Ragnar again and again, while Ragnar just smiles. He calmly tells the man that he is already cursed. At that moment, Sibas quietly enters the building and asks if everything is finished. Ragnar casually asks him to clean up later, and Sibas immediately agrees. But suddenly Ragnar remembers something very important and turns to Sebas. Is there a way for Alicia to stay close to him? As soon as they arrive at the academy, Sebas freezes and asks if he means that she will live under the same roof with him. Sibas calmly explains that getting someone pregnant while still a student would be quite problematic. Ragnar instantly panics and rejects this idea, saying that it is not like that at all. He explains properly, if something happens, it will already be too late. He just wants to stay close to protect her at the right moment. Ragnar tells Sibas that she counts on him, and Sibas quietly agrees, finally understanding what Ragnar really meant. Later that night, Ragnar was walking alone and lost in thought. Since avenging his father, he had never gone so far for someone. He seems to ask himself when his heart stopped feeling anything at all, and as he walks further, another thought creeps into his mind. He wonders if he will really be able to fit in at the academy. Meanwhile, Alicia sits alone reading documents about the academy. Quietly, she doubts whether her preparation is enough. She still needs to explain many things to Ragnar. And with thoughts of each other which warm their hearts for a long time, the night slowly deepens. Several months passed, and finally the day of departure came. Alicia quietly says that tomorrow they will go to the royal capital, regrets that she will not gather daikon in time, and the once sinister noblewoman now personally tends the garden. It is hard to believe that this is the same Alicia who was once feared. Resources that were once invested in elite noble education have now gone to housework and everyday chores, and surprisingly, this very thing showed how truly capable she is. Later that day, maids began to gather around her. One of them in tears, imploringly asks Alicia not to go. Someone insists that the visit to the academy should be decided exclusively by the young master, while Alicia is quite willing to stay at the estate, and Sebas quietly observes and notices how much everyone's attitude toward her has changed. One of the chambermaids reassures Alicia, don't worry about the vegetables. As soon as they ripen, they will be sent straight to the academy, but Alicia gently refuses and asks that the harvest be eaten together with everyone at the estate, and at that moment another chambermaid reaches into her pocket. She put her hand into her pocket and pulled out a collar, explaining that it once belonged to Ragnar when he was little. If the young master behaves arrogantly, Alicia should use it to teach Sebas a lesson. Soon the carriage sets off. One of the lackeys loudly warns Ragnar that if anything happens to Alicia, he will be punished and will have to wash the floors. Ragnar immediately says that he understands everything. Another voice calls out to not catch a cold, and someone else reminds to eat the vegetables. Alicia quietly giggles at all this, tells Ragnar that everyone here sincerely loves him, and honestly admits she is a little jealous. Ragnar goes over everything in his mind as the carriage rolls forward. For the first time in his life, he is leaving the boundaries of his territory. He sees again and again in his memory every face they left behind. Now he is finally going. Later, when they were making their way through the mountains, Porter points forward and exclaims that the royal capital is already in sight. Alicia suddenly falls silent, and Ragnar immediately notices her hands trembling. She says nothing, and then Ragnar awkwardly admits that he has a request for her. As soon as they arrive at the station, he wants her to show him how to buy a ticket. He also asks her to teach him how to ride the train. Alicia bursts out laughing. Ragnar immediately asks her not to laugh at him, but Alicia just smiles and says, "Leave everything to me," since this is essentially his first real outing. She explains that there will be a crowd in the royal capital, then jokingly asks if she should put a collar on him so he doesn't get lost. Ragnar instantly refuses, and a thought arises in his mind. Strange game has this turned into. Finally, they pass through the gates. Alicia begins to show him every corner while Ragnar silently looked up. Here is the royal capital Ether, a city with over 1 million inhabitants, hidden under the protection of a barrier said to have been created by an ancient sage. In Ragnar's mind, this difference is striking. There are almost no monsters here and not even wars, so it's no wonder that people flock to the royal capital. Alicia quietly says that compared to the brave land, this place seems cramped, but comparing the capital to their homeland is almost unfair. Together, they wander the city, trying new delicacies on the go. Then Ragnar asks if the dormitory they are heading to is located on the academy grounds. Alicia confirms and explains that the dormitories for boys and girls are separate, and Ragnar says he is looking forward to seeing it. As soon as they appear, his expression changes completely. Alicia points to the building and says with a smile that this is the dormitory where they will live. Ragnar stands and looks, not believing his eyes. The place is neglected and shabby. It is also incredibly far from the school itself. He cannot understand what kind of place it is, but suddenly Alicia notices a letter from Sebas. She unfolds the letter and immediately begins to read. The letter says that settling them in a neglected dormitory and forcing public humiliations is meant to convince the nobles who oppose their return. Alicia instantly understood everything. It seems Sebas has already told many people about this. Ragnar sees it differently. If there is no one nearby, then the place is actually convenient, although it definitely needs cleaning. Alicia agrees. She even considers planting vegetables in the yard. But suddenly, reading further by the window, she noticed another line in the letter. It says, almost in passing, that condoms are kept in the young master's room, and Ragnar instantly crumpled the letter in his hand. Alicia slowly turns to him, and Ragnar shakes his head in panic and haste. The rest of the letter explains that Sebas was only able to arrange for them to live nearby. But for Ragnar to get into the same higher class as Alicia, he still needs to pass the academy exam. Sebas wishes him luck at the end of the letter. Ragnar carefully considers everything. Even if he manages to pass, the real trial will only begin. They enter the Eternum Academy, a place where almost all noble children of the country gather, and where classes are strictly divided by status. Those who can be bound by marriage ties to the royal family belong to the upper class, and all others to the lower. But if someone has extraordinary magic or knowledge, even commoners can join the ranks as descendants of the sages. Ragnar freezes from the sense of scale. All of this is incredibly vast, and he already imagines the chaotic school life that awaits ahead. They are simply nobles from a distant province, and Alice herself has already been called a villain, but Ragnar's determination is already unwavering. If this becomes a duel of skill, he will prove they can win. The next day morning came suddenly. A sharp voice shouted that he was late. The teacher openly mocks and reproaches. How could some nobleman from some distant land allow himself to make a higher-class teacher wait? Ragnar just smiles and apologizes, explaining that he got lost. He is here for the first time. He stands in sportswear while the teacher calls him slow, and Ragnar quietly thinks to himself that everything turned out exactly as he expected. Then the teacher announces the first test, a basic magic check. Ragnar is ordered to release all his magical power directly at the target. Ragnar asks if there are any special requirements for using magic during the test, but the teacher immediately waved it off and said there are none, just hurry and do it. Ragnar quietly takes a stance, while the teacher mutters to himself, outraged he can't believe that he himself got to be the examiner of this student. But suddenly Ragnar releases his magic, and at that moment the wall shatters into pieces. The target shattered completely, and the same force tore through the walls behind. Dust and debris fill the air, and the teacher froze in shock, staring at the broken target lines stretched across the floor. He cannot comprehend what just happened. Who is this man really? Ragnar calmly turns to him and asks if he passed. However, the teacher quickly pulled himself together and angrily announced that there would be more tests ahead. In his thoughts, he honestly admits, Ragnar is clearly talented in magic, and to his misfortune, the teacher has already decided to make sure he never passes. Teacher sharply throws a wooden sword toward Ragnar. Ahead is a sword fight. The rules are simple. If Ragnar defeats the teacher, he passes. Magic is strictly forbidden. If Ragnar cannot fight, he loses. Ragnar instantly agrees to the terms and says they need to finish everything quickly. The teacher irritably called him a barbarian from the outskirts, but immediately rushed forward with the wooden sword raised high. At that moment, Ragnar swung. The clash lasted only a moment. The teacher falls to the floor with a crash, and Ragnar calmly stands over him, he holding the broken remains of a wooden sword. But when Ragnar looked more closely, he noticed a strange thing. Someone had hidden iron in the teacher's wooden sword, while he himself was given an ordinary wooden sword, and he quietly realized the truth. The teacher planned this from the very beginning. If Ragnar's sword broke and he could not fight, the teacher would immediately take him down. Suddenly, another voice cut through the room and asked what all the noise was about. Ragnar suddenly turned around, clearly surprised. And there by the door stood the Academy's director himself. Vor, a grand cascade, an unexpected meeting at the Academy, and Ragnar does not yet know whether it will bring good or great trouble. Vorzia says he heard that today is the transfer exam and asks if it is true. Ragnar immediately recognizes him, Vorzia, Grand Cascade Director of the Academy. A man with the title of Sage, moreover from one of the ducal families, and Ragnar quickly understands. If someone like Vorzius pays attention to him, it could turn into a big problem. Vorzia calmly enters the room and sees the teacher, who has fallen to the floor. For a moment he falls silent, as if deeply pondering. But suddenly he unexpectedly announces that Ragnar has passed away, and Ragnar himself stands clearly stunned. He instantly thanks the sage and sincerely asks if this decision is truly acceptable. Vorzia explains that there is naturally a certain difference in blood between higher and lower ranks. But still, having thought it over, he directly asks Ragnar if he wants to join the upper class. Ragnapazis is not at all someone who desperately chases status. The reason is completely different. Here is someone he must protect. Hearing that answer, Vorzia calmly accepts it and thereby officially confirms Ragnar's admission to the senior class, but the teacher lying on the floor immediately protests. He insists that Ragnar is from the abandoned borderlands. Moreover, her fiancé has already caused a serious incident, and he is racking his brains about what the two of them should do next. Vorzia instantly called the teacher a fool. Then he asks the man a simple question: what exactly is his role in this academy? The man replies that he is a teacher. Vorzia coldly says, if you really consider yourself a teacher, then you must properly guide the students and prevent problems, not create them yourself. Teacher immediately apologizes. Ragnar can only stand there in silence, while Vorzia, as a special exception, still continues to speak. Ragnar and Alicia can continue to stay in that dormitory, but as students they are expected to behave decently. Ragnar agrees immediately. Later, returning home, Ragnar rewound everything in his head and suddenly realized that he himself also helped the main character level up in the original story. Finally, he approached the dormitory and loudly announced that he was already home. As soon as the door opened, Alicia panicked and rushed to him, immediately asking if he was all right and if anyone had said anything strange to him. Ragnar calmly reassured her that he was fine, but then his attention suddenly focused on her outfit. He looked at Alicia and wondered why she was already in the academy uniform, assuming it was for fitting, although it hardly mattered to him. He quietly thought that it suited her. Later, Ragnar told Alicia that he had passed the exam. It was not the exam he really wanted, but after everything he had been through, he still passed it. Alicia immediately asked what had happened. For some time, she had been tormented by curiosity about Ragnar's strange magical state. Ragnar explained that he could use all the basic forms of magic, although the details were hard to explain properly. But before he could continue talking about what he was really best at, Alicia's stomach suddenly growled and silence filled the room. Alicia immediately became embarrassed. But she quickly changed the subject and said that dinner needed to be prepared from tomorrow. Life at the academy would become very busy, so something nutritious was needed, and after that she hurriedly ran away. Ragnar followed quietly, thanked her softly, then asked, if anyone problematic appeared at the academy, let him know immediately, and Alicia reminded him that using force was forbidden there. She said that she really didn't care anymore what people said about her, especially when he was nearby. Ragnar immediately blushed at these words but quietly admitted that Alicia was probably stronger than him. Alicia looked embarrassed. In Ragnar's mind, Alicia had a rare ability to endure emotional pain that even experienced soldiers barely manage, and Ragnar himself knew himself to the bone. He clearly understood who he was and what he could endure. Next day they finally went to the academy together, and whispers instantly spread around. Some recognized Alicia's dual scar, others confirmed that the rumors were true. A few people asked who the man next to her was, some quietly said that despite everything Alicia remained beautiful, and another cruelly remarked that now she would never marry properly. Ragnar repeatedly told himself to stay calm. Calm, in control, but then another student muttered indifferently that Alicia's status had fallen so low that she might only remain someone's concubine. The next moment the student suddenly falls unconscious. His friends are gripped by panic and shock. Alicia quietly whispers to Ragnar to stop it, but Ragnar immediately puts on an innocent look, pretending not to know what happened. Later in the lecture hall, Ragnar contemplates the situation. He only released a drop of deadly energy, and everyone from the mainland seems incredibly weak. But then he remembered the most important thing, that sooner or later the main hero of this story will awaken as a saint. The heroine was once a beautiful girl, like a perfectly clear blue sky, but Ragnar struggles to remember her name. Suddenly during the lecture a voice sounded nearby, Mariana Ocean. The girl calmly answers the question. She explains that the sage most often resorted to magic without attributes. To master such magic, one must reach the peak of non-existence. Ragnar notices the girl with glasses. Instantly he understood everything. Here she is, the heroine. The teacher smiles and confirms Mariana's answer is correct, although the question was tricky. But he says that such a level of understanding can only be expected from the sage's student. Mariana quietly adjusts her glasses, and then suddenly they slipped off her face, hit the floor, and shattered. Ragnar watched this in disbelief and began to wonder if this girl really must be the heroine of the autumn game. Mariana quietly mutters to herself about the broken glasses while whispers immediately started in the class. Someone noticed that this was already the fourth pair she had broken this month. Another said someone should switch places with her, but yet another explained that Mariana politely refuses every time. Ragnar cannot comprehend this. With such a character and appearance, she somehow has to build a romance with the prince. Mariana quietly confesses, if she had known this would happen, she would have asked for a seat closer to the front rows. One of the girls nearby kindly offers to switch seats with her. But Mariana immediately refuses, insists that she is completely fine and will manage on her own somehow, politely thanks the girl for the offer, and the classmate, though reluctantly, accepts her answer. But suddenly the teacher directly calls Mariana. At the next rearrangement she will sit in the first row near the podium. Understood. Mariana immediately panics and, bowing again and again, constantly apologizes. Watching the scene unfold before her eyes, Ragnar suddenly remembers Alicia. What was Alicia really fighting against all this time? Later, during the holidays in the dormitory, Ragnar chews over this story again in his head but knows, asking Alicia directly about the past is a terrible idea. Men who dig up old wounds are the worst. But then suddenly something crashes through the roof with a bang, and Ragnar instantly raises her hand. Suddenly a transparent barrier grows around Alicia, saving her from falling debris. Looking up at the huge hole in the roof, Ragnar calmly says that it's quite a pity it will have to be repaired later. Alicia stared at the invisible shield around her and asked what that transparent thing was. Ragnar explained that it was a hidden barrier. Alicia looks confused, and noticing this, he begins to explain in even more detail. The magic he uses is a transparent barrier made only of attributes and works just like those huge protective barriers that envelop the royal capital itself. Alicia immediately asks if he can cast magic without saying spells, and Ragnar casually confirms in many situations this is extremely convenient. Most people imagine barriers as visible walls-like. However, the spell was without singing, but then, even before Alicia managed to fully comprehend his explanation, Ragnar suddenly pours a whole teapot into the void. Alicia instantly panics. Ragnar explains that his barriers can do that too, but instead of the coffee spilling everywhere, the liquid suddenly hangs in the air inside a transparent shape resembling a cup. He casually says that barriers can be formed into the most diverse shapes. Alicia looks at the floating coffee with surprise. The spectacle completely captivates her, and observing her reaction, Ragnar quietly thinks to himself that she is truly sweet. Ragnar points out that there are other differences between ordinary barriers and that massive shield that protects the royal capital. Alicia thinks over the answer for a long time before speaking. Perhaps the difference is that Ragnar can decide what to let through and what to block. Ragnar instantly confirms she is right. Advanced barriers can decide for themselves what to let through and what to repel. Alicia understands that it seems like the barrier can do anything, but Ragnar points out it has limitations. As soon as sugar or milk dissolves in coffee, it can no longer separate them. Everything that is completely mixed cannot be divided. The mention of coffee suddenly reminds him of something important. They have completely run out of Alicia's coffee beans. She agrees with sadness. Those she brought from the territory have finally ended. After a short pause, Alicia blushes a little and asks if Ragnar will be free later. If so, she wants to go somewhere with him. It seems she knows a place with really tasty coffee. Later, the two of them wandered the narrow streets of the royal capital. Alicia quietly says that the place should be somewhere nearby. Ragnar asks where she got this information. Alicia explained that a friend told her about it. Ragnar was surprised. Even after everything Alicia had been through, she still knew how to make friends as expected. Alicia says that once during a lunch break when she was studying alone in the library, a girl approached her. She also loved coffee. They immediately became friends, and later this girl recommended this cafe to Alicia. Suddenly, Alicia stops and points ahead. They have arrived. Ragnar looks up and reads the sign above the building, Coffee Specialty Shop Ocean. As soon as he reads the name, everything freezes in his mind. No, it can't be. Could it really be? Doorbell rings just at the moment they enter. But suddenly Mariana appears from inside the store. As soon as she sees Alicia, her face instantly fills with surprise. Ragnar is also stunned. Alicia casually said that she came to visit, and Mariana noted that she had been standing motionless near the store for a long time, wondering what was going on. Finally, Mariana noticed Ragnar next to Alicia and joked that he probably really loves coffee. Alicia calmly introduced him Ragnar, and he politely greeted Mariana. Mariana suddenly looks at him more closely and seems to have realized something. He is actually in her class. Alicia asks if that is true. Ragnar confirms, although they have never talked to each other. But suddenly Mariana got nervous and started fussing, rushed to apologize, admitting that she would never have imagined that someone from the nobility would visit such a place, and then asked why Alicia was with Ragnar. Alicia looks puzzled and says that she is also from the nobility, and most importantly Ragnar is her fiancé. As soon as Mariana heard this, she instantly rushed into desperate apologies, fell to her knees and, humbly begging, apologized for not recognizing that they were noble, calling her mistake unforgivable. Alicia is completely shocked by such a reaction. Meanwhile, Mariana panics even more and already wonders if she will be executed for the mistake, but Alicia immediately stops her and assures her that no one will execute her. Watching how all this unfolds, Ragnar quietly whispers to him, "Thank you." He thought to himself that this somehow became incredibly disappointing. This girl is supposed to be the main heroine. Later, settled in a cafe, Mariana apologized once again for being confused earlier, but Alicia said that she should be the one apologizing. Mariana quickly waved it off. Alicia was not to blame for anything, since Mariana herself approached first and explained that she was so happy and excited because she thought she had finally found a friend. Seeing Alicia, who is drinking coffee alone in the library, she instantly decided that Alicia is a simple girl, just like herself. Ragnar quietly pondered, in this world, coffee is considered a drink for ordinary people, but he himself loves it very much. Mariana says she heard rumors that this year 2 students of the Sage will come to the academy, so she immediately assumes something else. Ragna instantly catches this detail. 2 students of the Sage, this is not like in the original game, so besides Mariana, there is someone else. Alicia then asks Mariana if she really knew nothing about that big incident caused by Alicia. Mariana sincerely admits she did not know and even asks if this explains why Alicia was isolated all this time. Mariana looks genuinely shocked that such a huge scandal happened without her knowledge, and Ragna does not understand how could she not notice such a loud commotion. Mariana awkwardly admits that that day on the way to the academy she accidentally got on the wrong carriage. Ragnar quietly squints. The carriage somehow ends up in a completely different place on the day of such an important event, coincidence or not. Alicia notes that everyone says Mariana is a genius in magic, but she herself notices that Mariana is a bit absent-minded. Mariana immediately agrees. She admits that she is talented in magic, but according to her parents, she is almost good for nothing in everything else. Ragnar casually asks Mariana about her parents. But as soon as he does, Mariana's face softens, and she quietly explains that both her parents died a year ago from illness. Alicia immediately sharply scolds Ragna for such an insensitive question. Ragna instantly apologizes, admitting that he was careless, and Mariana gently tells them that it's okay, she is here because of her parents anyway. But suddenly Mariana jumps up and asks if both want coffee. She invited them here herself and hasn't offered anything yet. Later Mariana prepares carefully. We brought both coffee and dessert. At the moment Alicia takes a sip, her eyes open wide in surprise. The taste is simply incredible. The taste is completely different, not like Ragnos's coffee. Ragnos awkwardly laughs and agrees. He cannot understand this. After all, they use the same beans, so why does his coffee turn out completely different? Suddenly he remembers how Seabass once said that Ragna's coffee was bitter, almost like a reflection of her life. Ragnar jokingly tells Mariana that from now on he will consider her his mentor. Mariana instantly panics and rejects this idea. Alicia quietly explains that Ragnar is just joking. Mariana blushes a little and confesses something unexpected. Although they are noble, these two are not scary at all. Ragna asks why Mariana seems so afraid of nobles at all. Mariana quietly explains that it is because of an old memory. Long ago some other child from the neighborhood warned her. It turned out, if someone dared to contradict the nobility even a little, they could be killed. At the same time, Mariana herself was hit by the carriage of a nobleman just as her child had warned. The people in the carriage did not care about her condition at all. After that accident, Mariana's eyesight became much worse, and when her parents heard that coffee could help vision, they decided to drink it together as a whole family. They barely had time to blink and they all became true coffee fans. Mariana looks at her cup and quietly laughs at how rich the flavor has become. Alicia asks about Mariana's magic, and everyone unanimously says she is incredibly talented. Mariana admits that it is true. Of all her abilities, she is best at healing magic, the power that heals others. Alicia instantly turns to Ragna with surprise and asks, "Isn't such magic extremely rare?" Ragna confirms. In this world, people who can heal others with magic can be counted on one hand, but Ragnar remembers the future from the game and eventually, Saint Mariana becomes the one who can cure any disease, cleanse demons, and even restore lost limbs. But Mariana quietly lowers her eyes. A year ago she could not save her parents, so now she studies so desperately. If someday someone dear to her appears again, she wants to have the power to save that person next time. Hearing those words, Alicia was deeply moved. Without hesitation, she stands up and hugs Mariana tightly. Alicia notices something strange in the cafe. There are no other visitors around at all. But Ragnar casually admits he was the last one to enter, so when he came in, he closed the shop behind him. Alicia instantly grabs him by the collar, not believing her eyes, scolds him for interfering with work, and orders him to open the shop immediately. But Mariana quickly intervenes and says that this is completely normal. Lately, she has been so immersed in her studies that she even closed the cafe on holidays. Later that day, Mariana sincerely thanks them both for coming. Alicia wonders why hasn't Mariana moved to the academy dormitory yet. After all, as a student of the Sage, she should be entitled to all sorts of benefits and privileges. Mariana smiles gently and says that she sincerely likes living in this house. Her studies and accommodation are already paid for as long as she maintains excellent grades, so part of the money from the dormitory fund is now redirected elsewhere. She said before they leave, Mariana tells Alicia, "If there are ever any problems at the academy, let me know immediately." Alicia quietly replies that just those words are enough, sincerely thanks Mariana, but suddenly Mariana looks at Alicia with admiration and exclaims that she is dazzling. At that moment she asks Ragna to give her Alicia instead. Ragna immediately rejects this idea, and Alicia looks between them confused and does not understand what they are even talking about. Later, returning to the dormitory, Alicia quietly notes that Mariana is a truly good person. From the very first moment of meeting, Alicia felt it. Mariana has the same eyes as Ragna. Eyes that look at her directly and without any hesitation. Sincere and beautiful eyes. Ragnar says he fully understands what she means. People with a strong core naturally look just like that. Alicia, with curiosity in her voice, then asked if Ragnar had ever seen anyone like that. Ragnar answers, yes. Suddenly he turns to Alicia and smiles. He tells her that eyes filled with determination to challenge fate are both beautiful and sweet. Alicia instantly blushes and awkwardly asks what that is supposed to mean. Does he want to pretend to be some kind of prince? Ragnar casually admits that he actually does not look like a prince at all. In the original story, a cunning aristocrat opposes a simple heroine from the people. These two girls were doomed to fight each other until one of them was completely destroyed. But now they peacefully share lunch. Mariana admiringly looks at Alicia's sandwich with various fillings and says how appetizing it is, and Alicia casually offers to share it. Meanwhile, high on the roof, Ragnar quietly watches the scene. Seeing how friends get along so naturally is true beauty to him. But he just can't get rid of the thought, how did it all turn out this way? Alicia immediately noticed that Ragnar disappeared somewhere again as soon as the break started, but even so, he takes studying seriously. Looking down at the academy courtyard, Ragnar quietly contemplates everything. Now that Alicia is always nearby, criticism towards someone from the wasteland territories will probably only intensify. But he is not at all against remaining a secondary character. What kind of fate is this, tell me? The main hero and the vile noblewoman must become enemies. They were close but never became close friends. In the original game, Mariana lived peacefully as an ordinary student. Meanwhile, Alicia lost the duel and was exiled to the remote borderlands. But in this version of the world, Mariana is clearly not the person Ragnar is supposed to oppose. So who defeated Alicia? Who exactly pushed her to ruin? Ragnar suddenly remembered something extremely important. The prince himself provoked the duel, his hellish curiosity. What is really happening behind the scenes? Ragnar decides to scout a little further. From the roof, he immediately notices them, a group of girls crowding around a young man and calling him excitedly. Edward Gran Edderdam, Prince. Several girls invited him for a walk, but he politely refused each one in turn, saying he had already promised to meet another. At first, he was engaged to Alicia. In the game, the prince's path was considered a true classic. Honestly, it was simple, almost too simple. It seemed as if the creators openly advised players to start with him. He was essentially a training opponent. If everything followed the original story, by this time the prince would have long since grown close to the main character. Then Edward apologizes to someone nearby for making her wait. The girl quietly replies that she just arrived, respectfully whispering, "Your Highness." As soon as Ragnar sees her from afar, he freezes in shock. Who is this? Edward quietly asks her to call him simply Edward, not by his royal title, but Patricia shyly refuses, insisting that it is too honorable for her to do so. Edward reminds her that before entering the academy they met in the castle town, and then Patricia simply, without hesitation, called him by his name. Patricia shyly says that back then she simply did not know he was from the royal family. Edward smiles warmly and says that their reunion at the academy is fate. Gently taking Patricia's hand, he whispered that since it was her, he wanted her to call him by his first name, not by title. Patricia is so nervous that she stammers when trying to pronounce Edward's name. Her face instantly flushed red with embarrassment. She quietly and shyly admits that calling him that makes her feel awkward. Meanwhile, Ragnar continues to watch her from afar. Something is off. In the original game, there was never a character named Patricia, and Ragnar begins to wonder if Patricia replaced Marion in the plot. If that's true, then who really is this Patricia? But suddenly more people appear and call for Edward. A few guys approach them. One loudly shouts that they are here too and warns Edward not to leave them behind. Another, wearing glasses, says he won't let Edward outrun him. And a third jokingly remarks that Patricia is incredible how she so easily attracts everyone's attention. As soon as Ragnar saw them together, he froze in shock. Each of them turned out to be a game character with whom one could start a romance. So the situation has already turned into a reverse harem, and one of the men excitedly suggests that they all have lunch together. Another immediately approaches Patricia. Meanwhile, Edward looks at his size and wonders if the others could hold back a little. Patricia is already supposed to be too overwhelmed. Patricia calmly says that it's all right. As always, she prepared extra portions so everyone can just eat together, and Ragnar, watching everything, quietly mutters to himself, "This is reverse harem 101. Patricia has already completely captured the role of the main heroine, and worse, this reverse harem situation is already in play, which means she somehow activated romantic flags in all potential guys at once. During the first run, this simply cannot be. Each of these men is next in line to lead his family, so brides should already have been arranged for them. If it were only Edward, it might still be manageable. But when one girl suddenly comes into the sight of several influential heirs at once, it's a completely different story. Honestly, it would not be surprising at all if after the release someone suddenly mysteriously ended up dead. Ragnar instantly decides, from now on he never wants to deal with this reverse harem. There, as he expected, was one person he could not ignore. One, Jalousus Granignite casually says that eating there together is much easier than fussing in a crowded cafeteria. He is the second son of the Ignite family. Above, Ragnar listens attentively while Giles's casually asks Patricia if she has heard about the mage who caused trouble in the land of the brave. Ragnar instantly forces himself to remain calm. Rushing headlong would be a terrible mistake. He remembers that Giles has always been a problematic figure. Giles was born as a backup plan so that the elder son Destin could inherit the Ignite line. A concubine's child, he grew up in complicated and difficult circumstances. In the game, his entire storyline was about escaping that twisted family, so his story was known as dark and emotionally heavy. But this made him dangerous. Depending on the player's choice, Giles could completely change as a person. Although the Ignite family had previously targeted Ragnar and logically their paths should have crossed sooner or later, strangely, they have not yet met face to face, so Ragnar decides to leave everything as it is for now. He just wants Alicia to live peacefully, and moreover, he strives to stop the destruction that might one day engulf everything to achieve this. But suddenly a voice interrupts him from behind. Spying on people is not very commendable. Ragnar instantly turns around and there stands the director of the academy himself. Vorzia the Great Cascade. For a moment Ragnar falls silent, then casually warns the director that climbing onto the roof is dangerous. But Vorzia calmly notes that Ragnar is probably the last one who has the right to say that. Ragnar quietly wonders, why did the sage suddenly come looking for him? At that very moment Ragnar realizes, the time is just perfect, he can finally ask the question he has long wanted to. In his thoughts he carefully recalls every detail. Patricia's natural light hair still has black shades near the roots, the impossible reverse harem, and now there is no doubt. Realizing this, Ragnar directly addresses the director. Tell me everything you know about the student named Patricia. Her origin, her past, the type of magic she specializes in, every detail. Vorzia simply thoughtfully repeats her name, Patricia Kindred. The director calmly asks Ragnar what exactly he finds suspicious, because according to him, Patricia simply honestly passed the entrance exams to the academy, and he insists that there was no secret interference or manipulation on his part. Ragnar quietly says that something is still not right. Pieces in his head continue to come together. During that event, the hero was deliberately separated from the others. If Patricia arranged this herself, then some nobleman must have helped change the carriage's route. It seems to be the Ignite family. Vorzia admits that he understands why Ragnar is so cautious. But until they find out Patricia's true purpose, it is safer to keep her where she can be watched than to let her go unsupervised beyond the academy. Ragnar reluctantly admits that there is logic in this and sighs quietly. It would be good if everyone just lived in peace. But suddenly the conversation changes. The director reminds Ragnar that he is still a student of the academy at his age. He should enjoy youth, not live under constant pressure. Why does Ragnar insist on such a restrained life? Ragnar answers immediately, because he is from the abandoned borderlands. People like him are better kept in the background. In his mind, there is only one thing: to endure these 3 years here. Enough, but then Vorzia suddenly asks, has Ragnar forgotten the pride of this very brave family? The blood of the brave lineage naturally resists hardships until the very end, until the last breath. Vorzia admits that he once considered their stubborn persistence nothing more than desperate clinging. But looking now at Ragnar, he doubted whether Ragnar's determination was really so weak. The next moment Ragnar swung and threw a punch straight into the director's face. A huge flash of light exploded across the entire roof. Outside, the students immediately panicked and screamed as the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the very force, cracks spread across the wall behind Vorzia. But Ragnar's fist does not hit, it stops at the last moment, and Ragnar stands with his fist raised, staring intently directly at the director. Then he calmly explains the truth. This very situation is what he wanted. He is simply doing his job, and if anything happens to Alicia, he will never forgive the director. He does not care if this academy is the director's personal little garden. The director calmly accepts Ragnar's answer, but if this is truly the path he has decided to take, he must prove it himself. Suddenly Vorzius asks him a strange question: do you believe in fate? Ragnar immediately thought, what kind of question is that anyway? For him, the word fate meant only one image: that terrible scenario looming over the game world. However, Vorzia does not stop. Mariana Ocean is someone born with an extraordinarily powerful fate, but now it is beginning to distort massively and rush towards madness. Sooner or later, everyone in the academy who has their own strong fate will also intervene, and eventually this country will most likely split between light and darkness. For now, Mariana is completely powerless against all this. Vorzia asks Ragnar, protect Mariana because she has been left without those who once guarded her. Mariana's fate was never meant to be confined in such a narrow world. Her path lies much further. Meanwhile, in another corner of the academy, Mariana quietly admits that she is nervous. Ragnar spins the director's words in his head and cannot calm himself. Predict Mariana. He begins to guess how much Vorzia really knows. Then Ragnar asks Mariana if this is her first time entering the dungeon, and she honestly admits that it is. Ragnar quietly recalled what practical dungeons are really for. These are places where students put magic lessons into practice. There are safety measures, but the danger is real. Just a little lowering of the protection, and injuries happen easily. Nearby, Patricia, trembling, admits that she is scared. Immediately, Edward gently soothes her, holding her tightly and promising that he will protect her. Patricia thanks him, quietly whispering that she is weak. The other boys immediately stand up as well, all swearing that they will protect her too, and Ragnar, watching the scene, honestly thinks to himself that dungeon training is really just an excuse for the boys who need to be won over to get closer to the heroine. However, deep inside the dungeon hides something truly important, the holy relic, and Ragnar quietly wonders what that fake heroine is going to do with it. At that moment, Alicia finally appears and apologizes for making them wait. She happily tells everyone that it is time to move out. Mariana waves enthusiastically at Alicia. Meanwhile, Ragnar quietly thinks that Alicia already looks more like an experienced adventurer than a student. Mariana asks her why she is so excited, and Alicia casually says that she just hasn't been in a dungeon for a long time. But suddenly another voice sharply cut through the air. Someone mockingly pointed at the broken girl standing there. A commoner clung to the academy, constantly sucking up to the nobility. How persistent she is. One of the girls nearby immediately agrees with Lady Yekaterina. Ragnar instantly recognized her, the same girl who always stood next to Alicia, with huge spiral curls. Katerina, with a mocking smile, looks straight at Ragnar's squad and openly mocks them, as if some dirty monkeys from the slums are now pretending to be their own, and it turns out even peasants have started gathering. Then she slowly walks towards them. According to Ekaterina, this academy is supposed to be a place for refined nobles. Ekaterina openly mocks Mariana, calls her dirty, and asks if she personally has to expel people like her from the academy. Stop before the situation escalates even more. Alyosha calmly walks forward and stands right in front of Katerina. Katerina immediately asks what Alicia wants. Alicia simply greets her politely, "Good afternoon," but this calmness only irritates Katerina even more. She explodes, demanding to know how Alicia can still be so confident after everything that happened. According to her, Alicia is to blame for ordinary people now running chaotically around the academy, a broken loser who destroyed everything. Alicia calmly accepts the hatred directed at her. If some Katerina wants to hurl at her, she believes she has already done enough to deserve it. Mariana has nothing to do with it at all. If Katerina really has complaints, let her address them to Alicia. A duel or any other challenge is entirely permissible. But if Katerina If they are going to target either Alicia or the disciple of the sage, Alicia sincerely does not believe that Katerina can win. Katerina's face twisted with anger. She mocks Alicia, saying that she has gathered a bunch of monkeys around her. Supposedly, Alicia's current state suits her perfectly to spend the rest of her life sipping coffee with commoners. Alicia just smiles and frankly says that she will continue to drink coffee because she really likes it. Completely disappointed, Katerina angrily walks away with her supporters while loudly complaining. The smell of coffee beans is simply unbearable. As soon as they leave, Alicia quietly sighs with relief. Meanwhile, Ragnar watches this whole conversation with surprise. Alicia is truly strong but still apologizes, saying that it is her fault that everyone got involved in trouble because of such a strange person. In Ragnar's mind are such moments that is why people naturally gravitate towards Alicia. He quietly tells her the truth. She looked cool. Ragnar glances at Mariana and casually recalls that insult to Katarina when she called Alicia damaged. Should they kill them? Mariana immediately smiles and picks up on it, pointing out that they also insulted the coffee, and Alicia instantly stops them both before everything gets out of control. Later, inside the dungeon cave, Mariana looks around with admiration. This is what the dungeon looks like. One by one, traps and monsters appear, as if the dungeon itself is welcoming them. Meanwhile, Alicia quietly wonders, why did their group somehow end up right on the front line? Thinking about a certain person, Ragnar apologizes and admits that it is probably his fault. He checks if both girls are okay, but suddenly it dawns on him Alicia reacted fearfully. However, Ragnar calmly soothes her, pulling out an arrow stuck near his body, and explains that he constantly maintains a protective barrier around himself only a few millimeters thick. Alicia instantly understands how incredibly advanced this ability is, but Ragnar immediately points out its weak spot. If his magical power ever runs out, attacks will immediately break through the defense. And as for how he created that magic, all of it. It all started long ago when he almost died. Then, in despair, he thought that if he could completely cover his body, maybe he would never fear death again, and from that fear, the barrier was born. Ragnar explains that he trained the barrier again and again for years, and after so many repetitions, using it became completely natural for him. He can activate it without even thinking. Mariana listens in amazement and asks if the brave territory is really that terrible. But Alicia immediately rejects this. For her, the edge of the brave is truly a miracle. Then Alicia casually says that during the summer holidays she plans to return there with Ragnar, and even asks Mariana if she wants to join. Mariana's eyes instantly light up with joy, and she happily says she really wants to go. Ragnar instantly agrees, saying it's a perfect opportunity, and then, as if casually, suggests training in the mountains while talking on the phone. He called it the Camp of the Brave style. According to him, having survived that training, everyone should be able to use magic without words. Mariana sincerely rejoiced at the thought that Ragnar would train her personally, and Alicia calmly told Mariana to try hard and also asked Ragnar not to accidentally kill her during the training. Yes, Ragnar confidently says to Alicia, "Leave everything to me." And at that moment, a tiny dark dragon suddenly appears in his palm, settles there, and just as quickly disappears. Mariana quietly gazes into the dungeon around and admits how mysterious everything here is. She begins to ask herself, why are there monsters in the dungeons at all, and even stranger defeated monsters simply vanish into the fog and leave no bodies. According to legend, these dungeons were created by ancient sages, and the more Mariana thinks about it, the stronger her admiration grows. There are too many secrets hidden here, so her attention slides to the dungeon walls. If they bring soil samples, they might reveal something important, so Alicia immediately tells Mariana to wait. Mariana is already swinging her tool and strikes the wall before anyone can stop her. In a moment, a huge magical circle suddenly appeared under her feet, and Alicia and Ragnar shouted in shock simultaneously. Mariana, could she have just activated something crazy? As soon as the magical circle lit up under Mariana, Alicia and Ragnar instantly rushed to her. Suddenly the ground disappeared beneath the feet of all three, and they fell into the darkness. When they were falling deeper and deeper into the dungeon, Ragnar instantly grabbed both girls and shielded them with his body, then safely landed on the ground. Mariana immediately looked around, admiring the unfamiliar area and wondering where they had ended up. Meanwhile, Ragnar quietly observed the surroundings. Everything strangely seemed familiar. Most likely, they had fallen to the lowest level of the dungeon. Ragnar could hardly believe it. He had accidentally activated a hidden teleportation trap. As befits the main heroine, Mariana was mesmerized by the walls around and spoke enthusiastically about how incredible this structure was. Alicia immediately took the pickaxe from Mariana and, scolding her, insisted, "Personal safety above all. If Mariana dies here, she will never be able to drink coffee again." But then Mariana calmly took out the coffee equipment and began pouring coffee into a cup as if nothing had happened, indifferently noting that this might be the last coffee Alicia would ever drink, and asked if she wanted some. Alicia just looked at her distrustfully, not understanding where Mariana got all this and, most importantly, why she had brought coffee things right into the dungeon. Mariana innocently explained that people say taking food into the dungeon is important. Ragnar quietly admitted that technically she was not wrong. Alicia could only sigh from exhaustion. Eventually, Alicia herself accepted the cup, and Ragnar also took some coffee for himself. Seeing that the two girls remained unexpectedly calm, Ragnar quietly sighed with relief. Usually, falling to the very bottom of the dungeon meant the end of the game. No rescue was expected, and surviving by eating monsters was impossible. After a pause, Alicia finally took the situation seriously. She admitted that she did not try to scare anyone, but now they were really in danger. At the academy, they were never taught about such places, and they couldn't even call for help. But Alicia noticed something strange. Ragnar seemed too calm. She directly asked him if he knew anything about this place. Ragnar quietly reassured her, whispering that everything would be fine and there was still something they could do. As soon as they rested a bit, they would head to the deepest part of the dungeon. Afterwards, the three went even deeper into the dungeon, and Ragnar couldn't get the teleportation circle he had seen earlier out of his head. Once in the original game, such traps were set by Alicia herself, but now she no longer followed that path, so who activated this trap this time? Ragnar was silent for a moment, then forced himself not to dwell on it. Now there is no other choice, only to move forward. Something important is hidden in the depths of the dungeon, a pendant. Hidden in the deepest chamber, the most sacred relic itself, an item without which the country cannot be saved at the end of the story. In the original routes, it could only be obtained by correctly completing each character's path. The relic is needed to awaken the saint, so they desperately need to get it. Usually the plan is simple: defeat the golem guarding the chamber door, and then escape to safety through the adjacent magical teleportation circle. But Ragnar cannot explain this to the others. Instead, he casually tells the girls that according to old records, victory over the guardian of the deepest floor should open the way back outside. In his head, although he remembered the truth, he was troubled by the fact that it was incredibly difficult to defeat that creature. Step by step they moved forward, and suddenly Alicia noticed something ahead. A huge store towers before them. Mariana instantly wonders, is this finally the way out? But Ragnar instantly feels something is wrong. There is no golem by the door who is supposed to guard them. Mariana notices movement nearby. Next to them, a huge creature slowly rises. The monster awakens. Ragnar instantly shouted the name Mariana and tears her away at the last moment. The creature lets out a muffled laugh echoing through the dungeon. Alicia. Isha instantly draws a dagger and tensely asks what this is at all. Mariana trembles, feeling his overwhelming magical power. It seems to her as if she is looking straight into the sun itself. Ragnar silently agrees. To release so much magical energy, this creature must be at the level of a dragon, Fenrir, or perhaps even a demon. And suddenly Ragnar remembers something terrible. By the end of the story, Alicia ultimately gave her soul to a creature of that kind, so Ragnar immediately tells both girls to step back. He absolutely does not intend to approach something so dangerous. But then he notices that Alicia is trembling and cannot move. Ragnar looks at her, and at that moment memories flood her how the duel ended and Patricia was declared the winner. Voices buzzed around her. She lost to some commoner. Shame on the Duke's family. The voices in her head still tore her apart. She herself issued the challenge, and this is what happened. Pathetic, Alicia groaned, pressing her forehead with her hand. Through blurred vision, she saw Patricia reaching out to her. Suddenly Ragnar grabbed Alicia's face with both hands. He grabbed her hands and forced her to look him straight in the eyes. He decisively called her by name, and Alicia instantly returned to reality. Mariana quickly ran up to Alicia, and Ragnar, asking if both could use Aquaveil, ordered them not to take a step. Alicia immediately asked what he was going to do. Ragnar answered without hesitation. He was going to kill that bastard. The monster laughed loudly, but Ragnar at that moment rushed straight at it, shouting that it would be held responsible for injuring his fiancée. When Ragnar accelerated, a fierce wind swirled behind him. For a moment he even thought the monster had somehow shrunk, but suddenly the creature appeared right in front of him and swung a glowing matchstick. Magic aimed at him up close. The attack instantly shot forward. Ragnar, with one swing of his sword, cut the magic in half. At the moment he looked back. At that moment the monster's claw was already descending on his back. Alicia and Mariana immediately shouted a warning, but Ragnar was even faster. With one move he cleanly cut off the monster's head, and Mariana exclaimed excitedly that Ragnar did it. He cut off its head, but Alicia instantly realized that something was wrong. The headless monster calmly stood up and said that its head had fallen off. Next moment the severed head was fully restored again. Ragnar calmly admitted the truth. That would never be enough to kill such a monster, and the creature laughed, asking why he even tried. And it boldly challenged him to hit it once more. Ragnar immediately agreed, no problem. He instantly rushed forward again and plunged his sword straight into the monster's chest. Ragnar openly mocked the creature. It was pathetic, not even worthy of the lowest-ranked member of the brave family. Such careless defense could never outsmart him. The monster laughed and admitted that maybe it had been a bit careless, but immediately emphasized that Ragnar shouldn't speak so confidently either. The next moment, scorching tongues of flame burst from the monster's mouth. Alicia and Mariana screamed as Ragnar completely disappeared in fire and smoke. The monster laughed and ordered him to burn, and when the smoke finally cleared, Ragnar was still standing there whole and unharmed. Ragnar calmly asked what had happened. Compared to this, the breath of a fire dragon is much hotter. The monster sneered at him, but Ragnar caught. Instead, he quietly whispered a question to the creature. It would be easier if it simply told him who was hiding inside. Ragnar was convinced that demons initially do not have a real body, so somewhere in their form hides a human host, a person who made a pact with the demon in exchange for the fulfillment of their wishes. The monsters just smiled at Ragnar and remained silent, and Ragnar calmly asked whose magical power this creature was really using. He slowly reached out his hand to the monster. And at the very moment when the tips of his fingers approached its skin, suddenly the creature howled in pain, then everything exploded. The monster exploded in a fierce blast, self-destructing, releasing a powerful explosion swept through the entire dungeon chamber. Alicia and Mariana barely survived, all thanks to the aqua veil barrier surrounding them. Despite this, Mariana quickly admitted that she would not be able to maintain the barrier much longer. In a moment, Ragnar suddenly appeared inside the protective veil and reinforced it with his own power. Eventually, the explosion subsided. When the smoke cleared, Ragnar quietly asked himself who was really controlling that monster behind the scenes. Mariana instantly ran up and asked if he was okay, but Alice immediately noticed the burns covering Ragnar's arm. Ragnar shrugged indifferently and said it was just a scratch. After all, he had already given his word he would protect Alicia, no matter what happened. Hearing those words, Alicia remembered the pinky swear they had made earlier. He quietly thanked him. He noticed the tension finally disappear from Alicia's face, and seeing her calm, he felt relief. Later, Alicia approached the collapsed part of the pit, looked down, and noticed something. She asked Ragnar what he was looking at. Ragnar explained that during the fight, he noticed a magical teleportation circle under the rubble. It should allow them to safely return to the upper level. The girls also came closer and finally noticed the glowing magical circle beneath them, and while they were distracted, Ragnar secretly held a sacred relic behind his back. Soon the three stepped into the circle simultaneously. Their bodies began to glow as the teleportation activated. One crystal-clear thought surfaced in Ragnar's mind. He had already memorized the feeling of that magical power. Now all that remained was to find the true body hiding behind it, and when he did, he would definitely kill that person. In the room, a quiet cough was heard. Behind the chaos of the incident during the training in the dungeon stood the one who secretly pulled the strings, Jealousies. The air around him was heavy and dirty, and as soon as someone entered, her first remark was, "How disgusting everything is here, no matter where you look." Patricia looked at Jealousies with icy disappointment and called him pathetic. Jealousies quietly looked back at her, and she immediately asked if did he find that sacred artifact. Giles just apologized and admitted defeat, but this instantly angered Patricia. Slapped him without hesitation and called him an idiot. Even carrying a demon inside himself, he still failed the mission. For Patricia, such a result was unbearable. They repeatedly apologized, while Patricia demanded an explanation. At that very moment, he blurted out that Ragnar Brave had intervened. Her name had just been mentioned. Patricia grew increasingly irritated. In her eyes, Ragnar was merely a local nobleman, a secondary character from the outskirts who should naturally disappear from the scene as soon as the plot moved forward. But it was this very existence that destroyed everything. Patricia initially planned to push Alicia into the role of the villain, but then Ragnar appeared and destroyed the entire course of her plan. Because of it, Edward's route could no longer be used. Even former followers ceased to be needed, despite the blackmail of their families and the pressure they were forced to obey. While Patricia was getting angrier and angrier, Jealousies noticed blood streaming from her wound and tried to say that she needed treatment. Patricia instantly put him in his place and instead ordered him to undress. Later, when the anger finally subsided, Patricia quietly asked Jealousies where he was wounded. Jealousies slowly pointed to his neck, and Patricia, without a word, raised her hand and directed healing magic over the wound. But as soon as she focused on the wound, an image immediately surfaced in her mind. Jales had his head cut off with one blow, and only this memory petrified her face. Ragnar was just like Hera reincarnator, existing outside the natural flow of the world. and Patricia could not stop wondering how someone like Ragnar could act so ruthlessly without hesitation. If his situation was similar to hers, then it might make sense. But then another problem arose in her thoughts. Jalesis resorted to self-destruction afterward. His body should have been completely destroyed, but Patricia eventually told him that it was still a spectacular defeat in her eyes. He had succeeded. Hearing those words, Jalesis completely broke down. His eyes filled with tears, thanked her again and again, and Patricia just smiled. To her, Jalesis was always a crybaby, constantly whining, but at the same time, he was still her dear younger brother. From the day he was born, he carried a demon within him, a rare creature just like her. Jalesis again whispered to Patricia. Patricia told him that for now, she was perfectly fine being his older sister. As soon as she said this, he buried his face in her shoulder and hugged her tightly, and after calming down a bit, Jalesis looked at her and called her older sister again. He admitted that Ragnar was incredibly strong, so much so that he would never be able to defeat him. Patricia quietly sank into thought again. In her mind, this child had not changed at all. Jalesis had always been a crybaby since childhood. She gently called him by name and asked what he wanted. Jalesis froze for a moment, then finally dared to show it. He wanted Alicia. He wanted that girl only for himself. Even if it meant destroying Alicia, Jalesis still wanted her only for himself. The obsession inside him had already twisted his mind. He quietly whispered to himself that he would chain her and then they could be together forever. Patricia listened to him calmly, then blurted out the obvious answer. If he really wanted Alicia, he would have to kill Ragna and take her, because now Alicia belonged to Ragna. Jalesis hesitated and tried to explain something, but Patricia immediately interrupted him and simply said to trust her. For her, he was special, and as long as he moved forward, his older sister would stay by his side, and then without any warning, Patricia kissed him right on the lips deeply and slowly, and at the same time, Gills suddenly felt a powerful surge of magic flowing into his body. This overwhelming sensation stunned him, however. As soon as it ended, gratitude instantly blossomed in his eyes. He promised that next time he would give all his strength and swore that he would definitely win. Patricia was silent for a moment, then casually told him that he had already won. Gills looked at these words in confusion. Patricia smiled and noted that a sweet girl had hugged him and even kissed him. For her, that was already enough to consider it a victory. Gills stood stunned, unsure if that could even be called a victory, and Patricia simply replied that it absolutely was. In her eyes, those schoolchildren with monkey brains seemed to live for such things, and she even advised him to go back there and see for himself. However, speaking so casually, Patricia's eyes slowly shifted to the window. Below there stood Ragnavald Brave. As soon as she saw him, her expression quietly hardened. Patricia could not comprehend what true role Ragna had in this situation. At the stage she knew so well, his existence made no sense. She did not understand why someone like him suddenly appeared, but one thing was certain: if Ragna continued to interfere with her, she would not spare him. The glass in her hand suddenly cracked from the pressure of her grip. Deep in her thoughts, hatred for the world only grew. This cursed world had already caused her incurable disgust, so she decided to carve her will directly into fate itself, into the world itself. For Patricia, destruction became a choice, and in her eyes quietly burned both a terrible curse and absolute determination. When she heard a certain topic raised, Alicia quietly whispered the word date under her breath. Mariana immediately leaned closer with intense curiosity and began to inquire about what exactly happened that evening. When Alicia and Ragnar were walking through the city together, she wanted to know what they were doing all that time, and Alicia looked embarrassed and insisted that there was nothing special. While the two girls chatted nonstop, Ragnar stood right behind them and no one noticed him. In his mind, he already felt that he missed the moment to intervene, but as soon as he heard the word date, his curiosity instantly awakened. Alicia calmly explained that when she and Ragnar were strolling through the city, suddenly the air smelled of grilled kebabs nearby, so they decided to try that very street food together, and surprisingly, it was the first time for both of them. Mariana really looked shocked by this answer, that Alicia didn't know this could still be forgiven, but to find out that Ragnar was the same way completely threw her off. For her, it was unexpectedly strange. But then she remembered something important. Until recently, Ragnar didn't even know how to properly travel by train, and this immediately made her realize that he was strangely protected, or perhaps just inexperienced in this world. Out of battle, he seemed almost helpless, and Ragnar, standing behind them, quietly listened and thought that Mariana had completely figured him out. Mariana continued speaking and admitted that Ragnar really was a mysterious person. Alicia quickly agreed with her. At first, she thought so too. But over time, her attitude slowly changed, and now she truly considered Ragnar quite cute. As soon as Ragnar heard this, his face immediately turned red. Alicia later admitted that during their last walk it was she who took the initiative. She herself took Ragnar's hand and led him through the streets of the royal capital, and Mariana became even more confused. She was sure that everything should be the other way around and the roles would be reversed. But Alicia instantly rejected this idea. She simply could not put everything on Ragnar. His perfect date apparently boiled down to throwing dice to decide what to do next. At this pace, the royal capital Harem could easily turn into a sea of fire. Mariana could only watch in disbelief, wondering what kind of person Ragnar was to create such situations so casually. Alicia suddenly remembered a piece of their first date. Ragnar, as if in passing, explained that some of the burnt places around the city were from dragon breath, while other ruins looked more like the pranks of a drunken hooligan. Finally, Mariana asked Alicia if she would like Ragnar to take the initiative more often, and Alicia simply replied that she was not against it at all. She wanted them both to stand on equal footing. That was exactly the kind of relationship she desired with him. Soon Alicia noticed that the lunch break was almost over, stood up, and suggested returning. When Alicia began to walk away, Mariana quietly lingered for a moment, looking at her back, and gently admitted to herself that she finally understood why Ragnar had fallen so deeply in love with her. For Mariana, Alicia was just too sweet, and Ragnar, hiding nearby, could only continue to blush upon hearing every word. It all started after that crazy week of training in the dungeon. But as if nothing had happened, the students had already plunged into the next stage of practical lessons. This time the lesson took place around the pool. Patricia stood in the water, supported on both sides by two students. She frankly admitted that swimming was not her strong suit. Moreover, she was afraid of the water itself. Edward quickly calmed her down, saying everything would be fine because he was nearby, but another boy immediately pushed Edward away and insisted that he himself should help Patricia. Watching everything nearby, Ragnar quietly thought that this was exactly the kind of reward people usually receive after a battle endured, but unfortunately none of it pleased him at all. Suddenly a voice called him. It was Mariana. She asked if he was not planning to swim in the pool. Ragnar answered calmly, "I'll go later." Meanwhile, several boys in the pool also began to call Mariana. They invited her to drink tea by the pool, but Mariana completely ignored them. She just stared into the water and thought about what perfect weather it was to practice magic. Ragnar noticed that those boys were clearly trying to attract her attention from there, but Mariana instantly dismissed this thought in her mind. Only Alicia and Ragnar could be calling her. Although Mariana was a commoner, she never caused great hatred among the noble students, probably because she always knew her place and behaved with dignity, so she might even have had a few secret admirers she was unaware of. But suddenly Mariana wondered where had Alicia gone. As soon as her name was mentioned, Ragnar involuntarily began to fidget with his hands. Deep down he was worried if Alicia was all right, but he forced himself to believe that she would be fine. Right now it was enough just to be near Mariana, if that could be called being near. If it was Alicia, she would definitely overcome any obstacle that stood in her way. Ragnar sincerely believed this. But suddenly water splashed right in Mariana's face and Ragnar instantly exclaimed, "What are you doing?" Mariana explained indifferently that she practices water magic, but a quick warning came from Ragnar. "It's dangerous, stay away from the pool." In the midst of the hustle, Mariana's glasses slipped off and disappeared. At that very moment, Ragnar heard the voices of students nearby behind his back. They mockingly called him the wasteland bastard. They grumbled that he had become too friendly with Mariana. Some even pointed to the scary scars all over his body. According to them, getting close to Ragnar was like inviting a curse upon oneself. Ragnar was not at all moved by the insults. Instead, another thought quietly flashed through his mind. If this continued, he probably would never find friends, and it already felt like a hopeless dream. He thought, is there really no one with whom he can truly understand, no one who would understand only by fists, no one he could sincerely call a friend? But suddenly, while Ragnar was drowning in thoughts, Jalisus unexpectedly sat down nearby and, as if nothing had happened, said, "Life is hard, and it seems Ragnar himself also has a lot on his shoulders." Sudden appearance completely caught Ragnar by surprise. Instantly he stood up and wary, clenched his fist. Gil calmly told him to sit down again. For Ragnar, this was his first real conversation with a prisoner, but from the first minutes he felt that something was completely wrong here, and no matter how much he thought, he could not understand what Jalisus was thinking about. Ragnar quietly wondered why Jalisus suddenly decided to talk to him. Trying to make the conversation ordinary, he asked if Jalisus really would not join the others by the pool. Jalesus answered indifferently that he was not very good with water. It seemed he wanted to explain more, but suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Instead, his attention completely shifted elsewhere. Jalesus did not take his eyes off Ragnar's body and noticed that he had an incredible physique. He then asked where all those wounds and scars came from, and Ragnar calmly replied that they were from the territory of Friep. At the same time, another thought quietly flashed through his mind. He probably could hide those scars if he wanted to. As long as Alicia herself did not hide her wounds, he did not worry much about his own. Strangely, he had already accepted them as part of himself. Then Jalesus asked if it was not the same territory of Friep that had been constantly at war with the neighboring country for years, and upon hearing the answer, openly admitted that Ragnar was impressive and really looked strong, but Ragnar immediately waved it off and said that Jalesus himself had a well-trained body. Jalesus casually explained that it was simply a result of how he was raised from childhood. Ragnar quietly agreed and added that probably each of them had their own difficulties. And then the conversation completely died down and an awkward silence fell between them. Ragnar immediately thought that the atmosphere had become unbearably tense. Part of him thought about moving to a completely different place, but another stubborn part would not let him forget that he had sat here first. Giving up this place now was somehow irritating. But while Ragnar was lost in thought, Jalesus suddenly fixed a deep gaze on him. Ragnar noticeably became confused. Jalesus quietly, as if from nowhere, asked him. He asked if Ragnar had ever held hands with someone. When asked if he had ever been hugged or truly loved, Jalesus admitted, no, he himself had never experienced that. Ragnar sat in complete confusion. For him, this question seemed completely unrelated to what they had been talking about at all. At that moment, Jalesus completely ignored the course of the conversation and slipped past her without any warning. At that moment, Ragnar immediately understood what was happening. It was the face of Jalesus, full of emotions. This was exactly the change in behavior that occurred after collecting 18 grains. The one who previously kept everyone at a distance suddenly began to strangely take an interest in the main character. The questions became increasingly personal. The curiosity only grew. And suddenly all those flags rushed straight at Ragnar, and he barely managed to comprehend it. Everything in his head seemed like some kind of glitch. So, understanding nothing more, Ragnar directly asked Jalesus why he was suddenly behaving that way. Jalesus simply replied that he was interested in him. Ragnar instantly understood. That tone, that phrase, it was a moment that advanced their relationship. For him, it was extremely bad with such a development of events. He seriously felt that Jalesus might suddenly try to kiss him or do something completely absurd. Instinctively, Ragnar quietly restrained the other hand. He was already preparing to unleash a fully bold counterattack if things escalated further. Before Ragnar could do anything, Jalesus suddenly asked what exactly he liked about Alicia. Ragnar froze, puzzled, and then Jalesus said something even stranger. He noted that Ragnar was not supposed to be here at first. As soon as those words were spoken, they both locked eyes with each other. It was then that Ragnar noticed an unnatural aura seeping from Jalesus's body, and immediately everything clicked in Ragnar's mind. Suddenly he realized Jalesus was the very demon he had once encountered in the depths of the dungeon. But this time the demon stood right in broad daylight and was not hiding at all. Ragnar immediately asked why Jalesus had come here. Jalesus calmly replied that this was a declaration of war, and then directly told Ragnar that he would never allow him to have Alicia. This statement completely caught Ragnar off guard, but before things could escalate, another voice suddenly interrupted them. Nearby Patricia called Gills from the side of the pool. She, as if casually, noted that Jalesus also did not get along well with water and suggested practicing together. Jalesus quietly stood up and headed to the pool. But before leaving completely, he glanced at Ragnar once more, then calmly said that now he understood Ragnar had never kissed anyone. Unlike him, Jalesus indifferently reminded Ragnar that he had already won, and that he himself had recently admitted defeat, so now each had one victory and one defeat. At least that was how Jalesus saw it, while Ragnar stood there completely bewildered. The confusion quickly turned into anger that blazed inside him. No matter how much he turned that thought over in his head, he could not understand why Jalesus was still obsessed with Alicia. Ragnar's murderous anger slowly grew, and he swore that one day he would truly kill Jalesus and definitely make him pay for it. What irritated him even more was that Jalesus was supposed to be in Patricia's harem at first, but now somehow he went straight to Alicia. The whole situation was absurd. Ragnar suddenly stood up in irritation and declared that he was tired of lurking in the shadows. If things had come this far, he would meet them face to face. He He even decided to take Onyx with him next time and deal with everyone involved, but suddenly he felt a sharp slap on his back. A familiar voice immediately ordered him to stop. It was Alicia. She looked at him suspiciously and asked what dangerous things he had been muttering to himself all this time. Ragnar indifferently replied that there was simply someone he wanted to kill. Alicia immediately spoke cautiously and asked if someone had said something to him again that offended him. But before Ragnar could properly answer, Alicia raised a completely different topic. Recently, she had heard rumors that many students from his class had been injured, and as soon as she said this, Ragnar just laughed awkwardly. Alicia immediately told Ragnar that this could not continue if he kept causing such reckless riots. His position in the academy would only worsen. However, instead of lectures, Alicia suddenly handed Ragnar a collar and quietly whispered that he did not have to wear it if he did not want to, but Ragnar replied without hesitation that he would wear it today. When he accepted the collar, Ragnar's eyes slowly slid to Jalesis nearby, and at that moment he realized a clear difference. Jalesis wanted Alicia to belong to him, but Ragnar saw it differently. For him, Alicia had never been anyone's property. On the contrary, he belonged to her. Yet one troubling thought did not leave him. He still could not believe that they had already started acting, trying to take the holy relic, and this made him wonder whether Patricia and Gilles had already realized the truth that they were the same kind of beings. The possibility instantly sharpened Ragnar's attention. Deep down, he felt that he could no longer afford to lower his guard. Lowering his guard was forbidden. Since then, he had to be on alert. Now he had to protect both of them.